It's not an issue for us to decide. It's an issue for the Israeli people to decide. Israel is a vibrant democracy. They've had, 5 elections in the last 8 years. There's no more democratic country anywhere in the Middle East and very few in the world. Newspapers in Israel are vehemently opposed to Netanyahu, but he's been elected. So he is the person who is in charge of making peace, for better or worse. You might ask me, would I vote for him if I were an Israeli? I'm not an Israeli, so I'm not going to answer that. There are voices in Israel that are extreme. Yes, some call the Palestinians Amalek. Amalek is a biblical reference to a group of people who attack the weakest women and children of Israel. And the Bible says, never forget Amalek. But the vast majority of Israelis would accept a two-state solution, would accept living in peace if there were a Palestinian leadership and a Palestinian people that really wanted peace. When you look at the two-state solution, look at a city like Ramallah. I've been to it many times. I visited with the heads of the Palestinian Authority there. It is a Palestinian state, a mini-state on the West Bank. There are no Jews there. There's no Israeli army. There's no Israeli police. The food is better than in Jerusalem. The buildings are more beautiful. There are more fancy cars and electronic shops than there are in Jerusalem. It is a mini state. If the rest of the West Bank and Gaza were like Ramallah, we could have a two-state solution. And maybe that's the way to build a two-state solution. Start with Ramallah, then move to Jericho, then maybe a couple of other states that could be cities that could be the basis. You know, a state gets built from the bottom up. They once asked Winston Churchill in the beginning of the 19th century, should there be a Jewish state in Israel? He said, should there be? There already is. They have universities, they have newspapers, they have political parties, they have disagreements, they have culture centers. So that's the way you build a state. You don't build it by getting Canada to recognize it or the United Nations to recognize it. That doesn't help build the state. So I'm hoping that the Palestinian leadership, we can get a new leadership, a leadership that is more interested in the Palestinian people than in destroying the Israeli people. But until we get that, until Golda Meir's wish comes true, Golda Meir said, we will have peace when the Palestinians love their children more than they hate our children. And as she also said in a related way, we can perhaps forgive them somehow for killing our children, but we will never forgive them for making us kill their children. The deep desire for peace, even though it's been challenged by events like October 7th, still runs through the Jewish people and the Arab people and the Christian people of Israel, if only you give peace a chance. But the Palestinian leadership has never given peace a chance.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ritter?
I'm going to start off by, again, agreeing with Professor Dershowitz. Netanyahu is an Israeli problem, and it requires an Israeli solution. But I would also say that Netanyahu is an American problem, because Netanyahu's misgovernance and what I believe are the crimes that he has authorized to be committed in the name of Israel against the Palestinian people has put his closest ally, the United States, in a very difficult predicament. We have domestic political issues because of this. This Palestinian issue has confronted the United States with questions of free speech and freedom of association and due process that, again, Professor Dershowitz knows the Constitution better than me, but we are having debates in this country that I don't believe we should be having, because the issues of civil rights and civil protections should be unchallengeable, but they're being challenged today because of the question of Israel, Palestine, and where does the United States place its weight behind. I think free speech is free speech. I condemn the KKK and its racism, but I would never suppress those who speak out in favor of the racism, because I believe that the better ideas went out, and I can easily come up with ideas that trump any racist idea that the KKK has. And I would like to believe that people who support the state of Israel, rather than silencing voices who speak out in support of Palestine, would say, let them speak, let them be heard, and then we will let the strength of our argument win out. But this has been damaging to America, and that's Netanyahu's fault. It's been damaging to America abroad. Our diplomats have spoken about the isolation of America internationally because of our unquestioned support for Israel. So this has been harmful to America. And I would also say now for Israel, Look, Professor Dershowitz, I don't have your experience. I yield to you. But I did spend 4 years working with the Israelis in the 1990s, hunting down Iraq's weapons of mass destruction, working with Israeli intelligence to eliminate that threat to the state of Israel. And I gained a deep appreciation for the Israeli state, for the Israeli people. I lived in Israel. I worked with the Israelis. And at that time, I could easily say that I supported the Israeli state. I was a big fan of Yitzhak Rabin, and I cried when he was murdered. But I've watched Israel change since that time, and the Israel that exists today is not an Israel that I can support. Netanyahu has created a morally indefensible nation, and so I can't speak out in favor of the continued existence of Israel as it is currently manifested. But again, I come back to supporting you. The solution is with the Israeli people. Israeli democracy. And the Israeli people will have to stand up, look in the mirror and say, is this the face of Israel that we want to see projected to the world? And I'm hoping that the majority of the Israeli people will look in the mirror and say, no, it is not. And they will solve the Netanyahu problem.
Professor Dershowitz, your response.
Well, you described the Netanyahu problem was caused completely by the Palestinian leadership. I, too, was a great friend and admirer of Yitzhak Rabin. And what happened is the Israelis wanted peace desperately, and then the Intifada began, and the murders began, and the Israelis moved a little bit more to the right. And when Soviet Jewry left and 800,000 people who had been oppressed by socialism moved to Israel, Israel moved to the right. So Israel has changed, but the change has largely been a function of the fact that it's been attacked, and that the peace process, efforts to make peace, I think the biggest change was the failure to accept the Barack Clinton parameters of 2000. I think we would have had a peace. Now, I agree with you. I want free speech, but free speech, and I support it. By the way, Harvard will not allow me to come and speak on behalf of Israel, so there's no free speech really at Harvard. But you talk about the KKK, but none of us would support mass KKK people harassing black students. And that's what's happened. Masked Hamas supporters, the equivalent of the KKK, have been harassing and preventing Jewish students from going to class. That's not free speech. So I completely support free speech, but not harassment of the kind that Hamas masked censors are trying to impose on universities.
Thank you, sir.
An interesting debate between Scott Ritter and Dallin Dershowitz, man. Go check it out on Mario Nawfal's page. And yeah, completely correct, man. You can't, like, people around Netanyahu, this ultra right-wing Zionists, they have nothing to do with the Jewish diaspora, or even some people in Israel, right? It's completely different ideologies. You got to understand, ideologically, guys, if Hamas were to say, hey, we're giving up on fighting for Al-Aqsa, we don't care about a two-state solution, it's going to be a one-state solution with Israel, we're going to release our arms, that's essentially saying that, hey, I don't believe in my own religion, because Al-Aqsa Mosque is the third holiest site, and growing up ideologically in Islam, we believe in that Al-Aqsa Mosque will be freed, and the Jews have also a similar belief that they're going to rebuild the Temple of Solomon. So the war is just not all geopolitics. It's really religious at the same time, but it all gets kind of mixed in together. So ideologically, that's like you surrendering what you believe in, and there's been instances where people try to distort the truth. A lot of people, like in the Saudis and stuff like that, will distort history and say, oh, well, actually the third holiest site is actually in Yemen. It's not Al-Aqsa, so we could just give up on the Palestinian issue and this and that. So very complicated situation, guys. But yeah, man, this debate was probably the best